Hey, first grade, Miss Van Wert here. Today we are going to read The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Our learning objectives are to review and discuss what you have learned about Mesopotamia, identify changes in the city of Babylon over time, demonstrate an understanding of the word caravan, and create a timeline to distinguish ancient times from modern times and depict changes to the city of Babylon. Our key vocabulary today are caravan, chariots, merchant, and platforms. A caravan is a noun, and a caravan is a large group of people traveling together on animals or in vehicles for a long journey. The caravan moved from city to city where members sold their goods. Chariots. Chariots is also a noun, and chariots are two-wheeled or four-wheeled vehicles pulled by horses that were used in ancient times. The soldiers stood tall as they drove their chariots into battle. You can see the chariots in this picture. Merchant. Merchant is also a noun, and merchant is someone who buys and sells goods. Okay, so if you've ever been to the farmer's market, those people are merchants. Mother bought some apples from the fruit merchant. Platforms. Platforms are nouns, and platforms are flat, raised surfaces used to keep things off the ground. The musicians stood on top of platforms so the crowd could see them better. These are diving platforms that you might see at a pool. So where is Mesopotamia? Okay, where is Asia? Which one is Asia? What color? Green. And we need to look for the Middle East because we know Mesopotamia is in the Middle East, so over here. And then where exactly is Mesopotamia? Right here in what we now call Iraq. All right, let's review these image cards. I want you to look at the pictures and tell your elbow buddy what you remember about it. What about this one? What do you remember from this one? I remember that there are two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and those are why we have the city of Babylon, right? Because the city of Babylon functions off of those rivers. Those people need the rivers for their crops and for drinking water and for transportation. And I also think about canals because the king had canals dug so that water could get from the river to people's homes. What do you think when you see this picture? I think of the city of Babylon, and I think about King Hammurabi and the laws that he created. I think about, what else do I think about? The rivers and how most of Mesopotamia was desert, but this was not. I also think about their religion. I think a whole bunch of things about Babylon, right? Ooh, and I see this. I know what I think of. Writing. I think about writing in Mesopotamia, and it was called cuneiform. And it was, they didn't write on paper. They used clay, stone, or wooden tablets, and they pressed or carved wedge-shaped symbols into those tablets as their form of writing. Okay. Oh, what about this one? The Code of Hammurabi, right? And those are all of the laws that the king came up with. All 282 of them. What do you think about when you see this one? I think about ziggurat, right? Because this is a ziggurat. And then there's the temple. And I remember that only the kings and the priests could go up here into the temple part. But people could come down and visit. And this is, each god or goddess had their own, right? And the priests would make sure that they were happy. The priests would bring like clothes and food, and I don't remember what else they brought, but they kept it clean. They were trying to make sure that the gods were happy. I also remember that the Mesopotamians were polytheistic, meaning they believed in many gods and goddesses instead of just one. So let's review what we've learned so far. We already reviewed what we knew so far when we were looking at those pictures, but we need to remember that Mesopotamia is considered a civilization because people living there farmed, they built cities, they developed a form of writing, they had leaders, they practiced a religion, right? So groups of people all around the world in ancient times and modern times have done these 5 things. There have been and still are many civilizations. So civilizations, they farm, they build cities, they develop writing, they have leaders, and they practice religion, okay? So think about the United States. Let's think about the United States for a second. Do we have farming and farmers? Absolutely, right? Do we have cities? You betcha. We've got big cities here in North Carolina. We've got our capital, which is where I'm from, Washington, D.C. That is a big city. Chicago, all sorts of cities, right? So we definitely have cities. We have writing, right? We have leaders. Right now we have presidents, and we have a president and a vice president, and we have mayors and senators and whole bunch of other people who are our leaders, okay? And lots of people in our country practice a religion. Some people practice Christianity, some people practice Judaism, all sorts of different religions, okay? So we are a civilization. All right. So what do you think Cradle of Civilization means? Okay, because today in the read aloud, you're going to hear that Mesopotamia is sometimes called the Cradle of Civilization. So what do you think that means? Let's think about the word cradle. Who uses a cradle? Babies. And what stage of our life does one use a cradle? The beginning, middle, or end of your life? The beginning, right? So Mesopotamia was one of the first known civilizations. It had all the important components that define a civilization. Do you remember what those 5 components of a civilization are? We just talked about them. Farming, cities, writing, leaders, and religion. Okay? And we could talk about all of those things in Mesopotamia, right? They had farming, where they grew crops. They had leaders. They had King Hammurabi. They had cities, the city of Babylon. Religion. They had a polytheistic religion, meaning they believed in many gods and goddesses. And they had writing. They had cuneiform, right? Okay, so civilizations evolve and change over time. This happens because new leaders, new ideas, new challenges, and new things are built. Today's read aloud takes place more than 1,000 years after Wored, Adin, and Omar lived in Babylon when Hammurabi was the king. Okay, so in this story, there's a new king ruling. So this is in the future of, well, it's not in the future, but it's still in the past to us. But the story that we're talking about today happened after the stories of Wored and Omar and Adin. Okay. All right, so I want you to listen carefully to what changes occurred in Babylon over the years and to find out more about the new king who ruled Babylon. Are you ready? Oh, and remember, we have to listen for those vocabulary words. Our vocabulary words were caravan, chariots, merchant, and platforms. All right. You may remember that Babylon stood on the banks of the Euphrates River and was the home of King Hammurabi, who wrote the laws called the Code of Hammurabi. Well, many years after Hammurabi ruled Babylon, there was another famous king in Babylon with another long name. This king's name was Nebuchadnezzar. That's a hard name to say, isn't it? Nebuchadnezzar. That could be a really hard name to say, but everyone in Babylon learned it. So what was his name? Nebuchadnezzar. I want you to try and say that. Ready? Nebuchadnezzar. All right. Here we find a whole group of travelers that make up a caravan headed for Babylon. A caravan is a large group of people traveling together on animals or in vehicles for a long journey. Let's pretend that you and I are traveling to Babylon with this caravan. We have been traveling for weeks to get there so that we can sell fine cotton cloth, which for now is all rolled up on the backs of our donkeys. Most of us are hoping to sell the things in Babylon and then buy new things to trade back home. Who remembers what the word trade means? It means to give somebody something so that you can get something in return, right? So if I give you, we were talking about this in my class. If you give me an answer or you come up with a really good question, I might give you a chocolate kiss. So you give me answers and questions and I give you a chocolate kiss. Okay, we traded. There are guides and guards to lead us through the desert and help protect us from bandits or thieves on the way. Some of the travelers actually come from Babylon, including a merchant named Ili, with whom we have become friends. So we're going to pretend that you guys are characters in this story, all right? And you and the storyteller or narrator have met a merchant, which is somebody who buys and sells goods, okay? And Ili has been away from home for months, and he is glad to be getting home to Babylon. As we approach the high walls of the city, you tell him, I have seen lots of cities with walls, but I have never seen walls as big as this one. Why do you think there might be an enormous wall around Babylon? Why do you think it might be so big? Let's find out. Ili tells us proudly, yes, it is about 16,000 cubits long, so that it can go all the way around Babylon. A cubit is an ancient unit of measure based on the length of the forearm from the elbow to the tip of your middle finger. So it's about here to here long. So it's like this long. Okay? It looks like it's about a foot. So about 12, 14 inches, I would guess. So that's a long, long wall, okay? The wall is so strong and wide that soldiers have room to turn their chariots and horses around on top. What? That's crazy. Chariots are the 2- or 4-wheeled horse-drawn vehicles used in ancient times, right? The Mesopotamians are actually the ones who invented wheels. Pretty cool, huh? But wait a few minutes and you will see one of the loveliest sights along the wall. Okay. A few minutes later, up ahead, we glimpse at a tall, wide gate in the wall. Blue glazed bricks cover the gate, glittering in the bright sunlight. That is the famous Ishtar Gate, Ili tells us. Our king had it built, then named it for one of Babylon's goddesses. Remember that the Mesopotamians were polytheistic. What does that mean again? They believed in many gods or goddesses. I love that wall. I think it is so pretty. What do you guys think? Do you like it? All right. Half an hour later, soldiers at the Ishtar Gate allow our group to enter, and we find ourselves walking on the streets made of stone. This feels strange after the weeks we have spent walking on the shifting sands of the desert. Remember, because Mesopotamia was mostly desert, okay? But Babylon was built along the banks of rivers. Do you remember what rivers? The Tigris and Euphrates rivers. What did the canals allow the Mesopotamians to do? To farm. Very good. Large statues stand every so often along the sides of the street. Look, the statues are made of gold. What? That's crazy. As we continue on our way, we pass marvelous places and busy shops filled with new things to buy. Tomorrow, we will take our cloth to one of the shop owners who has promised to buy it. Our friend Ili has invited us to dinner at his home tonight. You are lucky, he says. The windows of the inn where you will be staying look out upon the most amazing sight in all of Babylon. What do you guys think the most amazing sight of all of Babylon is going to be? Let's see if you're right. Do you mean the famous gardens, I ask? Yes, Ili replies. Then, looking around carefully to make sure that no one else can hear, he says quietly, King Nebuchadnezzar can be very cruel if he does not like you, but he also has a good side for those he likes or loves, and the person he loves most of all is his queen. The queen came from a land of hills and mountains with green meadows rich with tall trees and colorful flowers. Some say that after she moved here, the queen missed her home, so our king decided to build her a mountain covered with green plants, the famous hanging gardens, so the queen would not be so homesick. But now I must leave you, for this is my street. Remember, you are dining with us this evening. Come hungry, for there will be plenty to eat. And smiling again, Illy leaves us to continue toward our inn. We have gone only 1 block more when you glance over to the rooftops ahead and stop in your tracks. So when something hangs, it dangles down, like the way long earrings from someone's ears. Like my earrings, they're dangling. Do you see them? They're hanging down from my ears, okay? By looking at the picture, can you tell why these gardens were called hanging gardens? Look at how the plants are hanging down from the walls, okay? Look, you exclaim, your eyes opening wide in wonder. When I look up, I have the same reaction. There, rising above the roofs of the city, we see the famous man-made hill, many stories high. It is a series of level platforms built one on top of another and connected by ramps and stairways. So remember, the platforms are like little bleachers at a sports stadium, narrowing in size the higher you look. The platforms are almost completely covered with trees, vines, and blooming flowers. The flowers are in such abundance that they hang over the sides and give the place its name. We stand amazed at this sight. How on earth can King Nebuchadnezzar grow all these plants in the middle of hot, dry Babylon? What is needed to help plants grow that is not usually found in a desert? Water. That night, when we were all at dinner, Illy explains, the level parts of the garden are made of mud bricks covered in lead, so the water does not leak through. Workers had to carry up tons of dirt to cover those parts, and then they set all the plants in place. The water for the plants is lifted up in buckets and attached to a long chain. This chain runs around the edges of the 2 great wheels, one at the bottom of the building and one at the top. Workers turn these wheels with cranks, and the buckets dip into a pond of water at the bottom that is filled from the river nearby. As the wheels keep turning, the buckets become full and are lifted up to the rooftop of the chain. Lifted up to the top of the chain, where they empty their contents into another pond. From this pond, channels direct the water down to the different garden levels and among the plants. That's pretty cool. Kind of a creative way, right? I tell Illy and his family, I am amazed at how clever all